let's take a look at the layers panel. It's the left sidebar that we have in Figma. As you can see in here, we have a couple of options. One of them says layers, the other one says assets. And there is also this drop down in here that expands the interface for us a little bit, and it showcases all of our pages. So what you can do is you can kind of always see all of the available pages, or just work on one that you're currently on. You can rename the page that you're working on. So let's call this one first demo. You can also add little names, little emojis to the name. So something like this. And now you can see that the name in here also changed. So if you ever lose the pages that you have in your file, maybe they're just hidden behind this little click in here. And you also have a plus icon that allows you to add more pages. So this one can be called the second demo. And we can just rename it like this. So yeah, you can see how pages work. Pages allow you to have more than one canvas, in a sense, in a single file, since each page has its own canvas. And that's the space in here that you're working with. It's a really large space, so there's not going to be a lot of times when you're going to fill it up. But on some larger projects, it can happen that you're unable to scroll down anymore and add more files there, add more frames there. So keep that in mind. When you're working on a page, everything below this separator line is going to be actually on the canvas that you see. When it comes to the assets side of this sidebar, assets are basically reusable elements that you can work with when you're working in a larger team or with more people, or those are the styles from another document that you've brought into this one. We're not going to dive in too much into the assets panel in this course, but it's covered more in our Figma Advanced course. So let's see how layers present themselves when you create them in Figma. So I'm first going to create a rectangle. I just hit R on my keyboard, and you can see now that I have a rectangle that I can move around in the interface, and it also appears here on my layer list. So you can see now I've hidden the pages, and the layer that I have is on the top, and now there's a little bit more space for the pages, and the layer appears below the separator line. You can rename this by double tapping on the rectangle name. You can call this rectangle demo. And there are some other options in here. One of them is the icon on the left. It's going to present to you what type of a layer this is. You can lock and unlock the layer, which allows you, so as you can see now, when it's locked, it basically blocks me from moving it or doing anything to that layer. And if I unlock it, I can again move it around the interface. And I also have show hide option, which basically hides this layer or shows it as I'm designing. Another type of content that you might have is, let's just duplicate this rectangle for demo purposes, is a group. So if I hit Command G or Control G on Windows, you're gonna create a group of elements that you have selected. As you can see, I selected both of the rectangles, so now they're in a group. Groups and frames have the ability to expand and collapse, so you can see everything that's inside them still. And you can see that there's kind of a hierarchy in here where everything that's within the group is pushed a little bit to the right so that you know in what group it is. Now, what's specific about groups is you can't really work with how things are positioned inside that particular group. And also, there is no ability for you to kind of clip content in a particular way. I'm going to show what that means in a second, but basically think of groups as something that's containing all of the elements that you have selected, and the width and height of that element, which is something that we see here on the right sidebar with width and height, actually depends on the width and height of elements inside. So if I move this rectangle like this in here, you can see that the group dimensions changed. The width is now changed, it's a little bit smaller, and the height is a little bit bigger because it kind of looks at how big those two elements that we have selected together are. If I duplicate within this little group and create another rectangle and put it in here, the group is again bigger, and there's no way for me to actually control that without changing the dimensions of the items inside the group. And one way for you to switch from a group to a frame, which is a little bit different, is by clicking in here and going to the frame. Now you can see that the frame title appears on the top, which is something that we didn't have with a group. The icon in here changed, and again, hierarchy inside is still the same. Now what I can do with a frame is I have the ability to work with this option in here that basically clips content, which means that I can resize the parent frame, but it won't show anything that's inside the frame if it goes outside of it. So that means that the frame width and height can be different from the group width and height of all of the elements contained. And also when I go inside, all of the rectangles now have different constraints, which means that I can say how they're going to be positioned based on the parent frame. So if I click on this rectangle, I can set it to be left and top. On this one, I can say that it's going to be connected to the right side and that it's going to be top and bottom. So as I'm resizing the parent frame, the height of this element will change based on top and bottom distances. And I have the element on the bottom, which I'm gonna just have it scale, and it's gonna be stuck to the bottom. So now if I actually take the main frame, you can see that I'm resizing it. Some elements are changing their widths and heights depending on how I'm resizing the main frame. And one thing that I can do is I can reset them back all to left and top. And then when I'm resizing the parent element, it can be bigger or it can be smaller than the actual sizes of the elements contained. And that's the biggest difference between frames and groups. And it's one of the reasons why in design world, you're more going to be using frames than groups. Groups are maybe just used for kind of one-off moving of multiple items at the same time, or if you want to categorize your content and layers in a particular way without it influencing how it's going to work in design. So yeah, even though in some other tools like Illustrator, Photoshop, Sketch, you might have used groups a lot. In Figma, you're going to be using frames more often because it gives you so much more flexibility. As you can see, I can still remove the clip content option here in the right sidebar. And that means that the frame dimensions are still the same, but I can still see elements outside of that frame. They're not clipping. So yeah, now you can see that I can also create a rectangle outside of the frame in here. And let's make this one a little bit red. And you can see that it's in the same kind of hierarchy level as the frame is. That means that it's outside of the frame, and if I move the frame, it's not going to do anything to the rectangle on the top right. That's one thing to keep in mind as you're designing. Sometimes when you're creating elements, they might actually appear outside of the frame, and you might think that they're inside a frame. So if I do something like this, you can see that I put this above, or actually somewhere where I would think that it's inside a frame, but it's not. And you can always check the left panel to see where something is on kind of an imaginary z-axis. Think of it as like it's above the frame right now, even though it kind of looks like it's inside it. So if something is not moving right, for example, if I move this frame and I notice that a part of it is not moving alongside the frame, or if I'm exporting this frame as an image that I want to use in my designs, and this red rectangle is not exporting, one of the reasons why it happens is because that rectangle is not actually in the frame. So you can use the left panel and kind of drag and drop things in and out of it to ensure that they are in the spot where you want them to be. That's all about the left layers panel. Let's now move on to working with actual shapes.